Good evening, gentlemen. Randall E. Toby is in the building.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
In the building, Mr. Toby. How are you doing, Mr. Toby?
I am very well. I am blessed. It's such a pleasure to meet you, gentlemen.
It is a pleasure having you on our show. It is a pleasure to hear about the wonderful things you are doing. As a matter of fact, you are doing them in an area not that far from Dean, because I know that you are in the New Jersey area as well, and you did a lot of stuff actually which I was reading on your bio, and I was impressed. I was like, this man, when he was in college, and I don't know, because you didn't have the year on there, but Grandmaster Flash was popular, so I think it had to be at least some years put it on that you would throw at these parties that featured Grandmaster Flash and got you into the entertainment industry, because it sounds like you had a successful career in that for a while, but now you are mentoring our youth, and we know that our youth need some mentoring, and you and your wife have also started a business as well. So, and I know that you give a major shout-out to an incident that happened with your parents that actually got you into all of this. So that's just a little bit of what I read and learned about you. But we'll start off with the early history. How did you get involved in entertainment as a college student, and where were you in college at? Because it didn't say where you were in college at. It just said that you had gotten involved in some major acts, including, like I said, Grandmaster Flash and some other names that I recognize, but I don't have that pulled up right now, so you'll have to share with our listeners who those folks were.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Well, I was born in Brooklyn, but I spent a lot of my time in the early years in Queens, New York. And so I was in Queens Village, and we were doing shows at a place called Olympia Palace. And back in those days, you had the Grandmaster Flash. And it was the early days of hip-hop, and we gradually started doing some stuff in dance and house music, which was really big. And we worked at the Paradise Garage, Club Zanzibar, and many of the dance music clubs as well. But it all started because my brother was a rapper, and he used to go to a place called the Jamaica Roller Dome. And that was in Jamaica, Queens, when they had a club called Club Encore. And in the early 80s, we really thought that that was going to be our calling. But as you know, you plan, but God decides.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. So, like I said, you got that work, and you were doing that work with the and as I understand, you did actually get into the field for a while, not only doing the parties, but I understand that you even worked in the industry for at least a minute before the more of the greater calling came, and now you've written a book which is actually talking about that, about how we find our callings and how we actually get these callings. So I'm interested in hearing about this book, because the book just sounded fascinating. But tell us a little bit about what happened as you did the parties and how you eased into the industry, at least for a minute.
Absolutely. Well, we're doing a lot of stuff in dance music, and then Capitol Records approached me about being a road manager for an album called Black Havana. And so we went to London and Germany for a month. We did a lot of shows and parties. We worked with a lot of the house music artists of that day, and went to places like Club 1018. And really, I thought that was going to be what I was going to be. You know, my thing was I would be a Puff Daddy before Puff Daddy, but it wasn't meant to be. And I spent a lot of time working with artists and DJs. We did record promotions, and I loved it. I mean, I spent about 10 years in that industry. But it really taught me how to deal with difficult situations, how to deal with volatile personalities, and really kind of helped lay down the foundation to what I'm doing now.
So share with us a little bit about what you're doing now, because like I said, you've started this mentoring program, which I just love the name of it, Magnificent Mentoring and everything. So tell us about how that came about and what some of these messages are, because a lot of times we just talked about it earlier, we've got people that are doing counter messages to our youth that are even coming from the top. They're coming from like the White House. They're coming from other parts of society. So I imagine that this is some of what you have to talk to your folks that you're mentoring about, is how to cope with the environment that we are in now.
Absolutely. Well, Magnificent Men Mentoring Group actually started when I started working for a company that worked with men and women in the criminal justice system. I was an account manager helping those individuals find jobs, and it was an amazing, amazing opportunity, because I saw people that were arrested for all types of crimes. Some did some time in prison and in jail. And I also found out that a lot of people made mistakes. So one day I was having a conversation with three men, and we were in the room, which was the workshop. And as we talked about growing up without our fathers, all of the men started to cry. And what dawned on me is men rarely have these open and honest conversations with one another. And I felt that I wanted to do something where we could get together and have real talk about real issues, the pain we've gone through, the mistakes we've made, how to be better dads. And that's when it first started 6 years ago. So I've been doing it for about 6 years now. We started doing mostly everything in New York City. We had a relationship with the library in East Harlem, so for 3 years, we met once a month at that library on the east side of Harlem. But now we're a mobile organization, so our goal is really to go where the need is. We're focusing still on New York City, but now that I'm in South Jersey, we're looking to do stuff in Burlington County as well as Philadelphia.
You're in Burlington County now?
Yes, sir.
You're right near me then. I'm not far at all.
Yeah,
also, we have to connect.
Yeah, y'all definitely have to connect. He's with the NAACP, and he's right there in your backyard. So y'all have to talk because he's with the NAACP. So y'all are gonna have to make a physical connection and not just a radio connection. But it's interesting that you bring this up because I actually was on. I'm one of those people, and I've talked about on the show that. Me and cars have never been the greatest friends in the world, so I do the mass transit thing. And I was on the bus yesterday, yes, and there was a gentleman there, and that was actually what he was talking about. And I actually had referred him to one of our earlier shows. If I see him again, I'll actually refer him to this show. But he was talking about the fact that he ran into a friend of his. I'm guessing they probably are in high school together, would be my guess. And the friend had asked him, when was the last time he'd heard from an ex? And then he was like, not only have I not heard from the ex, but I haven't heard from my child. So he was basically making the fact that, he would like to hear, it didn't sound like he wanted to get back with the ex. He just wanted to we always hear complaints that men are not part of their children's lives. And it sounded like he actually just wanted to reconnect and actually be able to see the child. Because he was even talking about, he was asking this friend of his who was a lady friend, and it sounded like it was strictly platonic, to, if nothing else, get him copies of the pictures so he could just see pictures of his son. Because it sounds like that whatever this lady had done, she had kind of cut him off from his child. So I know that sometimes happens in our society, and I'm imagining you probably have stories that are similar to that even happening up there in New York, New Jersey area. Because I know just hearing that story, it touched me because I'm sitting there going like, wait a minute, I don't have any children, but I've got 2 nephews, and I know that if my brother lost contact with his kids, that would be devastating to him. So I imagine that I'm not saying that I spend enough time with them as their uncle. I probably should spend more time. But even if I was not able to spend what limited time I do, I know that would hit me real hard. So I'm imagining these are some of the things that happen that you have to deal with your folks that you're mentoring that are going through various states of relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the main things is for 3 consecutive years, we went to Rikers Island Correction Facility and did a self-empowerment workshop, which was for 5 weeks. So we dealt with young men that were locked up from age 16 to 24. It was a great experience. I don't know if you gentlemen ever visited someone's jail, but they don't make it easy for you. They kind of discourage you from being there. And it was amazing to walk in and see these young men with attitudes, sometimes a little angry and mad. But at the end of the day, when we finish the conversation, you start to find out they're still little boys on the inside. And a lot of times all they want is love. So we've been very fortunate and blessed to reach these men because, we have to look out for each other. Because in these times and conditions, if you look at what's going on in the world, if nobody else does it, if we don't step up, nobody else will.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's one of the things that folks don't understand is that we have to have positive role models. I know that there's some rites of passage programs and other kinds of role model programs, even here where I'm at around the Durham area, Durham, North Carolina, and around Raleigh and some of the other surrounding cities. And those programs are very much needed. My younger brother's actually been involved in some of those programs, as have some very good friends of mine and everything. But I know that a lot of times we don't understand that we're depending too much on the entertainers and the athletes and stuff to be the role models. And there's nothing wrong with our kids having them as folks that they want to look up to, but there's so many other people that they could be looking up to. I mean, we have right here in the Triangle area, we've got a Research Triangle Park area, which has got top doctors and top scientists and top computer folks and game makers and things of that nature. And oftentimes feel that even in our media, we don't reach out enough to them. And when I say our media, I'm talking about our own media. Like when I pick up a copy of our African-American newspaper, I don't see enough of the focus on these people that are successes. So I think that that's something that we've got to work on. And I know a lot of times these mentoring programs actually give people a chance to see folks that are in these kinds of fields that they might need to consider as a field for them as they are developing their goals of what they want to be as either a grown adult, because sometimes we don't even know what we want to be until we're well into our 30s, 40s, and sometimes even 50s. But definitely the folks that are coming up that are teenagers, that this gives them an opportunity to see things that they might be interested in becoming, and not just think that they're going to be the next rapper or the next LeBron or something of that nature.
You are absolutely right, and that's why our young people have to get more exposure. Because if you don't know, then you don't have dreams and goals to try something different. Last year, we partnered with the YMCA in New York City and Vanderbilt, the year before, and we did a kind of job fair. And what we did is had non-traditional companies come down to talk about the jobs that kids don't know about, the industries that you can make six figures, that you might be in the background, those jobs that where you can make $100,000 and nobody knows your name. So a lot of times sports is easy, entertainment is easy because it's in our face. But there's so many other careers where kids have other talents. Not everybody's meant to go to college. Some people are really good with their hands. They could be a mechanic or maybe a carpenter. So one of the things we try to talk to young people about is your gifts may not match what everybody else has, but it's uniquely just for you. So it doesn't mean you have to go to college. You maybe start a trade, start a business, and be an entrepreneur instead.
And that's one of the things I'm wondering, because we've actually had this conversation with some of our other guests. It seems to me that our education system isn't doing a good enough job of putting out those kind of opportunities, because a lot of times it seems like we push our education system. One, we're training our teachers to teach for the tests, and that's a mistake in and of its own self. But then a lot of times it seems like a lot of schools, I don't know how it is up there in the Northeast, but definitely here in the Southeast and in other places, it seems like we're pushing away from teaching our folks about trades. And you're right, a lot of times the plumber is making even more than the doctor is, because they get to charge a certain amount, and sometimes they're making, and a lot of times folks don't understand this, depends on when you get into medical school and what form of medicine you get into, you might not be making the kind of money that folks are expecting you're going to make, because, one, you got to pay off all that debt that you got by going to med school, and two, not all forms of doctoring are the same in terms of what kind of money you make. I mean, the heart surgeon is definitely going to make a lot more than, say, the person that's just doing general practice.
Absolutely, because, of course, if you go into a specialty field like the medical field to be an attorney, that's different. But there's so many young people that have gifts, that have intangibles that lead them in a different direction. Because remember, gentlemen, you both know this. School is not made for you to be an independent thinker. They want you to be part of the system and work for someone else. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But some of us have a calling that's a little different, that has to have the jobs so we can hire people that look like us when others don't, and give different opportunities for those that have skills that other places don't have.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. Now, one of the things that I know when I did the research on you and everything is you talked about how, and I was wondering if you'd be willing to share that story, how something that happened in your own family with your own, I believe with your mom, got you into this whole field of being involved in mentoring and helped you even change the direction in your life. So would you share with our listeners a little bit about what that story was? Because it seems like y'all went through a drastic change in the way that y'all were living, and that actually helped you change the direction of where you were going.
Absolutely. Well, like many people of color, one of the things that happened in my family was mental illness. And as you know, that was something that nobody talked about and people were ashamed about. So growing up as a young man, when I was 8 or 9, my mom happened to suffer from mental illness. And later on, she was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. So most of the young years of my life, we had a very unstable life. We lived in a hotel, which at the time was a welfare hotel in Brooklyn. We spent some time in foster care, my brother and I. And also we lived out in the park in Brooklyn on a bench for about 2 weeks with all our suitcases. So having her suffer from mental illness, losing her job, us being kicked out of our apartment, and having to move around for years of my younger part of my life created a certain determination, a certain fire and passion, and also made me a lot stronger. So mental illness and homelessness are two issues that are very dear and close to my heart, because my mom for a long time suffered from mental illness. I actually had to visit her in Creedmoor Psychiatric Center back in those days. And if you visit somebody in a hospital with mental illness, it's a very disturbing and a very painful thing. But I do believe that what she went through was a blessing for her and me, because thanks to the Lord's blessings, she's doing just fine now, living in Atlanta with my sister Judy. And I have taken that and incorporated that in the book that we worked on called Suited for Success.
Well, because you mentioned that you were working on a new book and everything, so tell us a little bit about the book and how that book is coming about and some of the things that you have learned from that book as that you are now sharing with other folks in your life? Because it sounds like to me like the book definitely got some real great life lessons.